Yes, so on March 31st, David Maroney begins and he'll be at your Conservation Commission meeting for an introduction on April 2nd. And so we'll be back up to full strength and we'll be a conservation planner. And he lives right in town, so the 7 a.m. meetings should be easy for him.
You seem very excited about having him on board, Emily.
Yeah, we all are. We're really excited to have David. It's definitely noticeable when we're down a staff person, whether it's, the planning technician or the conservation planner. Heaven forbid we ever lose the planning director. Yeah, and it was a very tough decision. There were a lot of really good candidates. I think I have an eyelash in my eye.
Morning. Getting up online here. Hey, should we do introductions for the AI transcriber that had difficulties? We'll call this meeting to order. Dave Westman is present. Laura and Reed are in the room. Looks like Eric and Gary are calling in.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I will have my what seems to be a perennial problem these days with kid drop off at the bus, so I'll be leaving momentarily in about 5 minutes, or actually
Yes.
2 minutes. I'm back
Schools,
online 5 minutes later.
schools are a real problem, Eric. You're right.
It is. It is.
Welcome back, Gary.
Yes, thank you.
Let's open up the minutes.
Implode.
Before I need to leave, I just wanted to say I feel like the description, like the very high level of detail in number 4 is probably not necessary. I'm not sure what that contributes to the record of the meeting, but if the group wants to keep it in there, I'm fine with that. The only other thing I had was in that last paragraph under the Glazer subdivision, um, under Chapin's comment, there's a typo there. I should say, I guess we're going, um, Mr. Kaner, not my Kaner.
Mhm.
Just given the fact that the notes need to be specific for staff, hopefully later reviewing these minutes for that action, I'm actually okay with the specificity for the town plan. Otherwise, I agree with you. Our notes don't usually need to be word by word, but I think for this one, it makes a lot of sense. And I actually appreciate how it's organized around specific actions, specific strategies. I do hope that staff will find that useful in the
Yeah, some of
editing.
it might be copy and pasted. They're very good notes.
Great. Did anyone find anything inconsistent with what they thought we took away 2 weeks ago on those topics?
No, I'm good.
There was one other correction, way up at the top in the minutes. Dave, I don't think you made the motion to approve the minutes, did you?
Oh God, I don't. I
Yeah,
don't
I
think
don't
I
think
was.
so. I mean, the chair usually does not.
Yeah, I don't think. I don't think that would be right.
That was me, I think, last meeting.
Yeah.
David and I look a lot alike. Both have glasses. Uh,
Yeah, my notes say Reed Carr
Yeah.
and second Lamar.
yeah,
Yeah. So again, for the record, Reed Carr, Laura Meyer, Dave Westman. It's okay. It's happened several times. All
All
right,
right, and I need to log off. I'll be back, and hopefully if the bus is on time in about 5, 6 minutes. Thanks.
thanks, Eric.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended. For the
Thanks,
name.
Laura.
I'll second.
Laura issues the motion and it's seconded by Reed. We'll approve the minutes as noted. Eric did not reject it. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
So
Gary.
4 ayes.
Yeah.
Abstain since I wasn't present.
Thank you, Gary. One abstention from Gary.
I think there needs to be 4 for there to be a quorum, so if it's the 3 of you and no Eric, so we
We
can,
need him.
Come back to vote.
yeah, we'll come back to vote at the end.
That sounds good. All right. So we actually have a pretty full agenda here. The next item on the agenda is actually something that Laura brought to us. It looks like we have our oh, I forgot to open this for public comment. Are there any public comments before we start the full agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to the Vermont Master Naturalist agenda. And looks like there's a staff memo that maybe we should open with. Emily, do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, thanks, David. So the Conservation Commission is reviewing a request from the Vermont Master Naturalist for funding for the 2025 to 2026 Vermont Master Naturalist Program. There's some information about the budget and more information about the wonderful programming in the memo provided by Alicia. The financial request would be $3,500. Up to 4,175 should the commission want to recommend funding a naturalist through the scholarship program. In terms of timelining and budget timelines, the ship has already sailed. We're in the last few months of fiscal year 2025, so probably not any funds available in this year. Funds for FY 2026 have already been budgeted, so we'd be looking at FY 2027, which would begin this summer and fall. The budgets are drafted by the town manager and department heads. Is in late November or when department heads present the budgets to the select board. And that's a critical date when we would know if this fund that would be recommended to the planning director would be received by the select board. Early January is when the select board warns the town budget for a public vote. And that's when we would know if this line item is in the town budget going to the voters. And if all goes well on town meeting day, the budget passes, it's confirmed on March 10th. And those funds would be available July 1st, which is the 2026, which is the first day of fiscal year 2027. This budgeting timeline would be after the program has already begun and pretty close to its completion timeline. In terms of the planning, zoning, and conservation budget, if there is strong interest to fund it either in this fiscal year or next fiscal year, it would require talking with the town manager about are there other budget items available beyond the plan outside of the planning, zoning, and conservation budget. And in terms of that town budget for FY 2026, these would be similar numbers to what you would see in FY 2027. The majority of the budget is salary and benefits. There's about 66,000 for everything else, including about 22,000 for trail maintenance, the stewardship coordinator, trail repair, engineering, and the Catamount Community Forest. So it'd probably be an amount grouped in with those more conservation focused items. Laura did provide some information about the program's past history and some members in the town who have participated. Ultimately, the action item for the Conservation Commission to make is making an advisory recommendation to the planning director, one, whether or not to fund the program, And if to fund it, what's the dollar amount that's recommended? I do want to note that we'll be adopting that town plan in fall of 2025. So in FY 2026, that town plan is going to be when we're thinking about FY 2027 budget items. So thinking about what other activities the Conservation Commission would like to see in that budget proposal as well. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you for that. Maybe we went in slightly out of order, but maybe Alicia, if you would like to talk about the memo that you sent us with that request.
Sure. I have loved working in Williston in the past. Just beautiful landscapes, very engaged citizenry. Really enjoy the program that ran there. And so we were trying to think about this coming year and came up with the idea to run a 3-town program because Huntington has wanted us to come there. And we just wanted a robust program. So we thought we'll start in Huntington, go through Richmond down into Williston, and that would be a nice sort of mountains to river narrative. So we do bedrock to birds training for people in towns, and then they do volunteer projects. And it's been very well received. I'm humbled by how many people wanted to participate. And I'm certain that we'll have no trouble filling this program. And just excited to spend time again with people in your town.
Great. I'll ask if there's any questions from the commissioners.
Just, Alicia, could you give a couple of examples of the types of projects that take place that might benefit Williston?
Absolutely. They often are either educational or they can be ecological and sense of restoration. Chapin Kaner has been working on Tree Island for many years now, and his doorway into that project was through Vermont Master Naturalist. Just as I just want to add, Dave Maroney trained as a Vermont Master Naturalist, and so sometimes it goes on to help their career. He went from Vermont Master Naturalist into the 2-year Masters of Science program that I also teach in called the Field Naturalist program. But it gives people a really solid ecological holistic overview, which they can share professionally as teachers, in his case as a conservation planner, and in other ways with the public. So we see more citizen engagement. We see the projects in and of themselves as valuable, but we see them as a window into having people really start to show up in their town. And it's been a pattern that we've documented.
Go ahead, Reed.
Alicia, the request for Williston is for 3,500. I saw that the registration is like 600 and something. So is the idea that the funds from Williston would sponsor multiple attendees or support the rest of the program, and people would still pay the participants would still pay the fee, or what? How does that work?
Yes, that is it. The second is true, that there is tuition, and then there is also individual towns. So the overall organization runs, but then we also need to design and run the particular program in your area. So the portion that you would be contributing would be specifically for that Williston program to pay leaders and staff time. And so they're both factored in to our overall costs.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe building on that, the memo doesn't really give a background or history of the Vermont Naturalist program, Master Naturalist program. Could you maybe just explain your organization and what your role is? And are you a volunteer? Are you paid staff? How does the organization actually stand up and work?
Absolutely. So I have taught in the UVM Field Naturalist program, which is a Master's of Science program for over 30 years. And I also would teach undergraduate courses. And over time, I started to think who else would be an audience for this really evocative way of reading landscapes and understanding natural history, which is kind of telling the story in chapters, starting with the geology, working through the glacial history, up through ecology and natural communities into human settlement patterns, and then so on. So I wanted to bring that out into towns as a way of engaging individuals in conservation. And so I started the program in 2016 in Burlington, and it has just rippled out from there. It's kind of taken on a life of its own, but we're all the way up into Cambridge. We are in central Vermont in the Montpelier area. We're down in Middlebury. We're starting to design a program for Shrewsbury. So we're starting to just, spread out across the state. What we find is that the people who go through the program are really develop a bond for each other, both within the town, but then later within the alumni network, which Laura Meyer runs with me. So there are a few, I'm the paid staff person, and then we have hired consultants like Craig Heindel, Sam Ford, Dave Muska, Sophie Mazuita. I don't know if these names mean anything, but within the naturalist community, these are all well-regarded glacial geologists, trackers, cultural geographers that we hire to come in and lead these trips. We try to look locally if there's someone locally who we both need them both to have the knowledge, but also the teaching capacity. Sometimes two different skill sets. So we find who we can find who fits the bill, and we also have this traveling stable of all-stars who will go with us into different towns. So I think we it's a little hard for me to be in the situation because I was kind of raised to be humble, but I had a Methodist minister and as a father. But anyway, I will brag to you that we often hear that this is the best educational experience a person has had in their life. So, we have really, really, really good educators working with us. And the story itself is very compelling. And told at the town level, it really helps people go, oh, this is why my garden is sandy, or this is why this place is vulnerable. And it's just really has a very applied angle to it because of its local nature that just sets off a cascade of understanding in people's minds about where they live.
Yeah, thank you. Reed?
Yeah, so just share a couple of thoughts. One is when I looked through the list of Williston master naturalists, I think Williston has gotten a lot out of this program already in terms of facilitated activities for people at Catamount, conservation projects, riparian restoration, the list goes on, bird conservation and education. So it's a pretty awesome list. I also think about the future of this commission, and I think Vermont Master Naturalists from Williston are an excellent pool of potential volunteers for not just serving on this commission, but also facilitating the types of things that we want to do in terms of weed warriors and public outreach and all sorts of different projects. So in my view, there's really good alignment between this program and what we're trying to do. And I'd like to see us in some way move forward. Maybe it's not for, maybe we can't do it this year, and maybe we have to do some work behind the scenes to figure out if there are funds that could be allocated, but the alignment looks really good to me.
Yeah, on this topic of funding, I guess Alicia, can you give us a sort of a status report on your 3-town approach and what your timing was hoping to look like for that?
Sure. And let me just say, because we have this 8-year history, almost 9 years, we know what it's like to ask towns for money, and that there's several steps involved often in accomplishing that. We have been successful doing that. So I'm going into this knowing that the payment might come later, and I have no concerns about that. So I'm not worried about that. I do want to make sure that if it's in 2027 and we need to actually meet in that calendar year to fit the criteria, that we add a date, in July or something, just to cover our bases. I seem to remember this first year we ran, there was a little bit of an issue about disbursement versus when the work took place. So I guess it's above my pay grade to figure that out, but I'd love to work with you to make sure that we check all the boxes. If this funding comes later in the 2-year, 3-year cycle of what we're up to.
So based on the town's memo, fiscal year 25 ends this June. We're about to go into fiscal year 2026, which has been just, approved by the voters. So fiscal year 2027 would actually start in July 1st, 2026.
Right. And so we have two most common start and end dates, and often it's like September to May, like we match up with the academic year because people travel in the summer.
Yeah.
So if we need to meet into the summer, we'd like to accommodate that, just to make sure that there are boots on the ground, when in the year that's been approved.
So it sounds like meeting in the academic year, fall 2026, spring 2027 is what would be the most easy to request from the town manager.
Yeah, we already have hired a coordinator to start this fall. We're planning out kind of multiple years, and so I'm understanding what you're saying, and we're already kind of deep into what we need to do to be prepared to run this fall.
Okay.
So fall 2025 through spring 2026 with the option to hold something in the early part of fiscal year 2027.
Yeah, yes. If it needs to be active in the year that it's approved.
Yeah, I'll double check with our finance director on that, if funds can be allocated for July 1 for something that maybe ended in May or June, or does it have to have like an encore gathering in July to make it?
Thank you. Thank
coach.
you.
Yeah, this is not an annual thing. This is, I mean, the next time it might be in Williston could be 10 years from now, we don't know. So to me, it doesn't really matter, if we have to do something in order to make it applicable for the funding year, then that makes sense to me. But in terms of, could we find something the next year, or does it have to be in fiscal year 27? It's not an annual thing. It's more of like a once in a while programming.
Often our grant disbursements are a reimbursement basis. So like with our projects, they span fiscal years, where it's like you've already done work with a consultant and then you get your reimbursement and invoices from them months later. So hopefully it can be okay.
Okay.
But I'll confirm.
Alicia, do you have confirmation from these other towns, or are you looking to get your first town on board to approach those?
So the Richmond Conservation Commission did pass this exact same funding request. They passed it to the select board in both forms, letting the select board decide about the scholarship portion. And we're on the agenda for April 7th in Richmond. I'm still working on the Huntington avenues for funding. I had been in Richmond before, and I knew the pathway for funding. So they have a conservation reserve fund, a pool of money that they can tap into for projects like this. So to answer your question, this is the second of of the three towns that I've approached, and I'm in conversation and have been it before the Huntington Conservation Commission. And we're figuring out what could happen up there.
Great. Thank you. So it sounds to me like we have an information request to staff about that isn't addressed in your memo, although thank you for the memo, Emily, because it is very comprehensive. But I guess the not sort of being clear or knowing what the nature of the request was for the timing, it seemed kind of hard for your memo to actually address that. Is like, is there a way to fund activities in the fall of 25 and spring of 26 with a fiscal year 27 allocation?
No, so if you wanted the funds to go out in fiscal year 2026, which would begin on July 1st
Yeah.
of this year, we would need to look for funding in an existing line item in the budget.
Right.
Which probably requires talking a bit more with Matt and the town manager about, is there a funding source, a line item that can accommodate it?
Right.
I do note that the town, when I was preparing this memo, the town does have like a social services organization committee. They get like 30,000 from the select board, but those funds get allocated to really critical needs like food, shelter, clothing. So this would not be a qualifying expense. So I explored that avenue, but it wouldn't work. But maybe there's something in the manager's line item or somewhere else that could meet the need.
Or if there's a fund balance at the end of the year, it could be allocated toward that, but that doesn't, you can't guarantee that, so.
Yeah. Well, there seems to be like a mismatch with what the request is and what the sort of natural ease of the budget, although putting anything in the Williston town budget, as we all know, it's not gonna be easy either. So I'm looking for suggestions from the commission on what and how we would like to proceed with this. I think it's clear that there is support for it. We'd love to have a program like this. My read on it is that right now, given the tightness of the budget, and for your awareness, Alicia, I'm sure Laura told you, we had to go out to ballot initiative to fund the environmental reserve fund this year. Our request for our allocation to that was met with a goose egg in the general budget. So we had to go out to ballot. We secured that ballot initiative. But it's a sign of how tight the budget is. And so Emily's point of how would you find this within the confines could be challenging. Nonetheless, if we wanted to appoint a specific person to talk to the town manager about whether or not something could be secured, we could do that as a sort of, I don't know, I guess, in addition to the staff memo from Emily. But I'm open to suggestions. Gary?
Well, I just had a question. Can this be partially funded with anything we have left this year, and then over the next two budget years, we fund $1,000 each or $1,500 each, and is that possible, Emily and Alicia too?
It was running through my mind, that exact question. So I do wonder if that'd be more palatable to do it piecemeal. And I certainly would be fine with that. I really appreciate your moral support and your willingness to look for financial support. And so I'm very flexible about any way I can help make that work.
Seems like that's more doable for us than getting one big chunk.
Laura, I know that you want to abstain from the vote, which I will appreciate, but would you be willing to continue conversations with the town about, exploring whether there's specific line items either in the fiscal 25 or fiscal 26 that might be able to carve out?
Yeah, I would be happy to.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is writing a little letter and I'll polish it up. But what it can say is the Conservation Commission recommends the financial support to the Vermont Master Naturalist Program. And then like a 3 options. So one would be finding full or partial funding with anything left at the end of FY.
25.
Yes,
Yeah.
in the FY 2025 budget, if remaining in June 2025. Second would be finding full or partial funding in the FY 2026 budget. And then lastly, if feasible, given financial restrictions or
Constraints, yeah.
allocation constraints.
The backup would be to work to get it into fiscal year 27 budget.
It might also just be from different pots too, like,
Mhm.
it could be spread out over 3 fiscal years.
Yeah, I mean, we have trail maintenance, we've got trail planning and engineering, we've got.
My preference would be to take what remains of those unspent funds
Okay,
for the fiscal year 25 and allocate it towards something like this, yes.
and then whatever remains, we can work
Yes.
on for the next 2 fiscal years.
Yeah. I think that memo is a great contribution. Thank you.
Yes.
So we're all trying to come up with.
Emily, or sorry, not Emily, Alicia, I'm gonna set my Conservation Commission hat aside and put my day job hat on for the Lake Champlain Basin Program and just share that. I think that from what I'm reading, what you have described in your scoping document here could also be eligible for Basin Program funding. You may have to tweak it a little bit to align with some of the priorities in our education and outreach grant program. Those funds would not be available until like about this time next year. But the way you have it structured with the around the Winooski watershed and some of the other elements in here, I think it could be competitive. And if you do get funding from the towns, they could also use that as non-federal match to
So
increase the scope.
thank you. And if I pursue that option, would I need to partner with a nonprofit because I am running currently as a business? Or do
Oh,
you?
right. I was thinking you were doing this through UVM. Yeah, you would need to partner with
Well, that's
let's talk about that offline. We can
Okay.
reach out to me at the Basin Program or Colleen Hickey, and we can talk about that.
that's perfect. Thank you for that suggestion.
Yep. Okay,
Well, looks
putting
like
my
we've got-
Conservation Commission hat back on now.
It looks like we've got a nice start to a memo. I'd also ask if the commission would like to request Laura to bring this memo to the town manager and pursue exploration of these 3 options. I'm seeing Reed nod in agreement and
Gary walk away.
Gary's got a thumbs up. I think we're good. So
Yep.
I would ask for someone to put forward a motion that allows Laura to continue working on this memo as a basis and to bring it to the town manager and sort of empower her to pursue these options.
So moved.
Excellent. All in favor?
We need a second.
I'll
Oh,
second.
yeah.
I'll second, okay, Gary seconds.
Gary seconds,
So
all in
moved.
favor?
Moved Eric Howe, second is Gary. Okay,
Approved with 4.
Laura abstaining.
Yeah, with Laura
Yeah.
abstaining. Thank you. It's too early for formalities here.
Thanks for educating us, Alicia. I learned
Yeah.
some stuff about the program.
This is great. I really appreciate you bringing this to us, and thank you, Laura, for bringing it to our attention and seeing what more we can do with it.
Thank you for your time and for all the work you're doing and getting up early and being there for Williston. And
We're definitely doing that.
well, you all.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Alicia.
Alicia.
Thanks, Alicia. Have a good day.
All right, Eric's back. We're gonna finalize the minutes. We had, I don't remember who made the motion.
I did.
Laura made the motion to approve the minutes. I think I seconded
seconded,
it.
yeah.
Reed seconds.
We didn't have a quorum, because Gary wanted to abstain, not having been here last time, Eric.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Minutes are complete. All right, and now on to level 5 or number 5.
Achieved.
We're leveling up.
Yes, we are. Final review of town plan chapters. We had a very robust discussion last week on the landscape chapter, and now this was meant to sort of be a very high level review. Hopefully you all remember what you reviewed last
Of course,
many
vivid detail.
many weeks ago at this point. Eric, you have the unfortunate task of being up first to review chapter 14 with us. Emily, I'm wondering if you could maybe share on the screen the document with our comments.
Yeah, I'll pull that document up in a brief moment. What I am going to briefly share first is the timeline. So this is kind of our Hail Mary meeting. I think it was really helpful last time to have some more of those nitty-gritty wordsmithing discussions on chapter 13, because that one probably needed the most work and is very critical to the Conservation Commission's role for this meeting and the other chapters. I think it can be a bit more high level, making sure we're all on the same page with the big picture. Starting this week, staff is gonna start taking all those, taking all those comments and compiling a document. The real goal here is the planning commission, in order to adopt this on time, they need to have their hearing on May 20th. Which means we need to have this document up on the town website May 1st, so it's ready for that public hearing notice period. So April 1st and 15th, the planning commission will be taking in all this feedback, working on refining it. And basically now through April 15th, Matt, Melinda, Hannah and I are just gonna live, breathe and sleep under our desks town plan until it's done.
That's right.
So today is kind of the Hail Mary for the Conservation Commission on those chapters. But it's not the end of the discussion, because there'll be joint meetings between the planning commission and select board. And I feel like we're feeling really positive things, that all of the feedback that's going into the town plan is very cohesive and collaborative. So we can go to the select board and say that, 99% of the comments that we got from everybody are moving in the same direction and just strengthening the draft, with the goal of having this adopted by August 19th with the select board. And now I'm gonna pull up
Great.
the other version.
Blow us away, Eric.
All right. Oh, there you are. Sorry, I was looking at the other thing, my notes. Okay.
Eric, would you chapter 14?
All right. So just very high level, and I hear you, Emily. I'll keep this. I think I wrote my comments last night with that in mind, though we wouldn't necessarily go through them one by one. So hopefully they are interpretable by the staff, and good luck over the next few weeks. I've been in that place a few times myself, and it's always a push to get these things out in time for a public hearing. So good luck. Super high level, beyond just chapter 14. I guess I encourage staff to look carefully through the actions to for places where there's multiple things to do inside of an action, if that makes sense. I saw that in a few places in chapter 14 as I was looking through it last night and flagged them, but just having like multiple actions inside of an action can be confusing in terms of figuring out what to do in there, and but also makes it harder to say at the end of the plan if you completed that action or not, if you had several things that you had to do inside of it. On to chapter 14. So this chapter largely focuses on stormwater runoff, not entirely surprising, to particularly with outreach to landowners around maintained lawns. I think it is missing outreach to landowners in the agricultural sector, and perhaps the forestry sector too. I honestly don't know how large that sector is here in town, but there are several places where working with Vermont DEC is referenced, other federal agencies and state agencies, Vermont Agency of Ag and USDA, NRCS are also resources that the town can look to for support and outreach. Otherwise, I think largely, my comments, as I said, are hopefully easily interpretable. Two places I want to flag in terms of like specific comments are down in 14.6.3. There's the action is integrate into the capital improvement plan small projects. I've been on the Conservation Commission for 15 years. I have no idea what that is. So that one kind of took me by surprise. Is that like a long-standing town program or something?
Small projects?
Just
No.
yeah. Well, the whole concept. What is the capital improvement plan?
Right, is that the same thing as the capital budget?
Yeah.
Isn't it the plan that leads to the development of the capital project? Like, in what future years are we gonna wanna do which things?
Right. Yeah, I feel like it might be the capital budget, because it's always that 5-year horizon.
Anyway, just something to think about for clarifying what exactly that is. And then I think we've talked about this in this commission before, but with staff turnover, I just thought it'd be important to flag that in the next strategy down, support the efforts of the Lake Iroquois Association, Lake Iroquois Recreation District. Yes, but those two groups they frequently do, but may not always align in their priorities. So there's just that to be aware of. And then there's also other voices interested in Lake Iroquois that definitely do not always align with the priorities of Lake Iroquois Association and the Recreation District. So I think that I just encourage the staff to think carefully about that and calling those two groups out specifically for managing the lake.
So like be broader rather than list individual groups, or
Yeah.
or
Yep.
just say that and others.
Yeah, that might be one approach. Yeah. Or if you want to identify those two groups or one of those groups, but have it be a very specific thing, like contribute funding. I mean, I think we're required, maybe not required, but we do contribute money, I'm pretty sure each year to the recreation district, something like that. But and then was there something else? Oh, one other specific one, and then I think that's it for me, that I just want to flag. So 14.8.2. I also didn't really understand what this meant, but advocate for ending the duplicative permitting for development. Who are we advocating to, and are we allowed to lobby?
Yes. So advocate for ending duplicate. So right now, developments that are served by municipal water and sewer, they must apply for and purchase and get permitted through the town's public works department. And then they also have to either apply for or amend their state water and wastewater permit. So it's this duplicative system within the for projects that are served by municipal water and sewer. The town does not, if you're on a septic system, great, you just get that one state permit, but if you're in the service area, you have to get a state permit and a local permit.
Mhm.
Which is duplicative. So that can be, we probably would be advocating to the state, DEC and legislature.
Or.
For the change.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just curious of what are they looking for different things in the different groups? Like for local, would it be looking, do we have capacity to deal with sewer and water? Whereas state, it might be another reason. Is that why, Emily, there's two different kind of permissions necessary?
We're both looking at, capacity and engineering specifications, so. I'm not quite sure if there's any areas that aren't overlapped in the review. But I
So
know
then
it has,
So
Yeah.
nothing would be missed by just going with the state permission, for example, instead of local and state. Is that correct?
I think the preference here would be to just go to local review, since we have a sewer service area, we have an ordinance, we're required to meet state and federal regulations anyways. It would just make more sense to do it at the local level rather than local and state.
So basically, there's nothing that we would lose out of that. There's no important piece that would be dropped if we did that.
Right.
I think there's a lot of examples of that and where you have different hierarchies or higher levels or different levels of government in which the lower level, if in the cases where the lower level has a more for lack of a better word, restrictive regulation than the higher level of the state. I think I've seen cases where the state will defer to the town if the town maintains that more restrictive layer of regulation.
Mhm.
Or if it's at least as restrictive as the state level regulation. So I mean that makes sense. I was just a little bit confused by the wording there. And all right, so the last thing is in 14.9. I was a little confused by just the language using refer and referring. So does that mean that the town is just moving those development proposals to the Champlain Water District or to the Fire District, and the town is not involved in those development proposals? Or is it the town is like collaborating or working with or soliciting feedback from the Water District and the Fire District?
I think we're just notifying them, and that might be one to change refer to notify. So what our bylaw says right now, the Marcotte subdivision is an example. You're in a source protection area, the bylaw says notify the Champlain Water District. So they're aware.
Okay.
They
Well,
don't provide comment to the staff or the DRB on review, it's just notify.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And in keeping with the high level rather than the wordsmithing request.
I'll say it required a lot of self-restraint to not get into the wordsmithing level.
I would call that one more clarity than
Okay.
wordsmithing, because that's a key policy thing.
Good, well, you had the right person review it, so there you go. I'm gonna take over for chapter 11 here. I just reviewed my comments, so I think I can get through some of these quickly. Honestly, it's mostly just awareness. Most of my comments are awareness for the Conservation Commission here. I did have one question, starting with the main objectives in chapter 11. 11F. This one deals with sort of a strategy behind the multimodal network and making it safe to walk and bike as regular means of transportation. Kind of stuck out to me that this could just as well be in the land use chapter, it could just as well be in like a separate transportation chapter. Having it be in energy and climate resilience felt a little, it's like, yeah, okay, those systems, they have an indirect impact on energy use and climate resilience, but like people use those things for totally different direct purposes, right? So it's kind of like climate and climate resilience.
It's like the secondary benefit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I would rather see this be a higher priority in a more specifically focused chapter, is my comment on that. Oh, and then I also called out that there should be a focus of getting money in the transportation bill for some of these critical transportation infrastructures, and I've sent memos to Eric on that, which is that we should be getting money from the state. We should be in that transportation bill.
Is that one in here already
It's in my comment on it.
on 11F?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way I did that was I put my comments and then I put my name.
Yeah, I
At
see
the
that one.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So I think the reason for keeping the multimodal network in that chapter is some of these duplicative ones that span a lot of chapters and goals are what's gonna rise to one of the top priorities. And I think even last night at the multimodal scoping study, we heard people say, think about a path network that's maybe there's places where you have the on-road bike lane and the meandering path for the topography, so you can have efficient bike
Commuters,
commuting traffic in addition to more meandering recreation. Although this one is kind of the more tangential to the energy goal.
All right. So I wanted to flag for awareness. I had some other comments that Melinda already responded to, so we'll just skip over those. So there's a land use and smart and sustainable growth objective on 1110. And that's got a lot of considerations in it that would probably come up for us in future approvals. And so I'm just flagging that for awareness. Land use and transportation strategy centered on mixed use compact development in the town's growth center, supporting the development of high intensity land uses within the growth center. Use of transit, ride sharing, active forms of transportation like bicycling and walking, promoting green infrastructure practices. There's a lot in there. Like I know some of that seems like it's focused on the growth center and we don't see a lot of those growth center applications come in, but I think for our awareness, knowing that those are the planning objectives there is good. So I wanted to raise that. Let's see, and then there was one coming up. Let's see. I think I'm in chapter 12 now. Sorry, I'm going through this.
All good.
I might
Okay,
do the same thing, scroll and chat. And
Yeah.
scroll and chat.
yeah, 12.8. I wanted to flag for awareness. Very much related, I think, to what we've talked about in various settings. And noting also that the responsibility was put with the Conservation Commission for this one, mitigating impacts of runoff such as excessive flow, sediment load, and excessive phosphorus discharge. And so the actions on this one are vegetative buffers along waterways, encouraging future developers to incorporate things like rain gardens and bioretention areas to capture and infiltrate stormwater. I think those are important building strategies, plans that we could be looking at. I guess the short of having like a lot of times those conversations tend to be like very nebulous, and then it comes down to like, well, what's in the town? What do we actually, what can we tell them to build and what can we tell them to do differently? So it seems like a nice to have, but like, I'm not really sure what we're, other than the vegetative buffers along protected waterways, how are we supposed to incorporate rain gardens and bioretention areas? Is that just for funsies? Because that costs money and developers don't want to do that. So,
Right, and that's when, like, for example, there's supposed to be a rain garden in the middle of the CVS parking lot, and it's just rocks that collect trash.
Mhm.
So that's a challenging one where it's, yeah, we can have some standards in the bylaw. It gets tricky because they're required to get a state stormwater permit. And then anything that's very high levels of maintenance, the zoning process isn't well set up to manage, so it might be looking at, it might be worth changing this one rather than thinking about development standards to. Is there a town incentive program where if you manage your land in a different way, you get a discount on your stormwater fee or something?
Mm.
Where it's less zoning and permitting based and more programmatic.
Mhm.
that could be interesting.
There we go, now we're getting towards
Yeah,
something interesting there, yeah.
yeah.
So if I can just interject, I think I fully agree with this strategy. I'm just having a hard time understanding why it's in this chapter. What is the hazard that we're mitigating by filtering runoff and reducing sediment and phosphorus load? And rain gardens, yeah, okay, maybe they're helping to mitigate flooding. Bioretention areas definitely. But I guess I don't see how this strategy aligns with the objectives at the top of the chapter. I'd be happy to include it down in the watershed watershed health chapter.
Yeah, it probably is better there because with hazard, we're really thinking about high critical floods.
Yeah, rain gardens aren't gonna do a
Exactly.
stop that,
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
they're gonna help with overall water quality.
There is a connection to 12.9, which I actually do think is more related to like the extreme flooding events,
Mhm.
which is again just something I wanted to flag for awareness. Also because this commission is flagged under the responsibility column is
Mhm.
to permanently protect land within river corridors and floodplains to enhance flood storage capacity and allow streams room to move so that over time streams will become more stable. And I thought that more clearly aligns with hazard mitigation, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And it's probably too late in the game to try and do something like this, Emily, but this one also aligns or overlaps, I guess maybe is the right word, with a couple, at least one strategy in the watershed health chapter. And I agree that this one belongs here, but it also does belong in the watershed health chapter. So I'm just wondering if something to think about. Is there a way to, I don't know about maybe, I don't know if it'd be add another column or do something down below that highlights strategies that span multiple chapters. And that could be a way to help prioritize things too. If you have one strategy like this one, 12.9, that hits a bunch of different places in the town plan. I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, we're working on something, whether it's gonna be like a little star symbol and the more stars it has, the more crossover it has with other chapters, but we're thinking of some visual graphic where these key ones that cross multiple chapters get visually denoted.
I wanted to also flag this particular one, 12.9.3, for things like riparian or flood areas. Do we agree that funding acquisitions with the Environmental Reserve Fund and grant funding, so, okay, so clearly not just the ERF, but do we agree that those low-lying flood-prone areas are especially given now.
Priority for the ERF?
Yeah, like, is that a priority for ERF conservation? Like, that seemed like a stretch to me. I'll just be totally honest. That the ERF is not for hazard mitigation, in my opinion, but I can appreciate why, you know, as like a working landscape potentially acquisition, but
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
When are changing it to like factor floodways in the ERF prioritization?
well, to me, it's not clear because, those areas would also not be suitable for development.
Mhm.
And so they would be lower priority from that perspective
Yeah.
for ELF usage. However, they also would give much more control to the town over what's happening in those areas, to actually put an easement on them or own them. So I can see that there's reasons both ways, but I was gonna suggest making this less specific, because I don't think we would say we're committed to using ERF funds for this purpose. We could say,
Consider.
well, I would say like, uh, seek acquisition or permanent conservation of, like, whether that's through grants, partnerships with landowners, or use of the ERF. I think that's to be determined, but
Right.
we do know that we want to preserve those riparian.
Yeah, and my point is not that the town shouldn't be focusing on funding mechanisms and trying to keep with the big picture of this task. Like, by all means, like, try to find ways to fund the, you know, the sort of allocation or the locking up of those riparian areas. And consider use of the ERF if if it sort of matches the ERF criteria, right? So it's like if you have.
It's just one funding source.
Yeah, yeah. One of, I would say, potentially many. And I think.
Gary, Dave,
Well,
Gary just had his hand up.
I just had a comment related to this. In the past, I know we've at least looked to using ERF funding for buying buffer zones or riparian zones around rivers, such as the Winooski River and such. So I certainly don't want to exclude the possibility of using it.
Oh,
The ERF, yeah.
Jacob Krantz is kind of one of those parcels too, right? Right on the river.
Right,
Yeah, or
straight up
along, I think I
away.
was thinking more along farms and such where a, you know, a good 100 foot buffer would really benefit the river quality, as opposed to plowing within 5 feet of the side bank.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gary. I think it should be on the table, but I just don't think we can sort of commit in the town plan that we're gonna spend ERF funds for this.
Yes.
Right, I think factor it into the prioritization list.
Yeah.
And then the funding's discern from there.
Okay, that's it for me.
We're over time, all right.
Reed, you have 3 chapters, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna be very high level, sorry, there's
Okay.
not, so the 3 chapters I have are 15. Right, 15, 16, and 17. They're all about land use. The first one is about boundaries, so this is more of like boundary adjustment type stuff. There was not a ton in here that I had comments on. It talks about continuing our long history of kind of separating out residential from rural and more intensive uses. That all is unremarkable, but good stuff. Looking at some minor adjustments between different zoning districts. I looked through them and I didn't see anything that was concerning from a conservation standpoint. So I didn't really have any comments on chapter 15. Chapter 16 goes into non-rural land use. And this one, there were a few things in, so you can see the high level goals there, 16A through D. It's about kind of seeing whether we're getting out of our zoning districts, what we want to get out of them. And then it goes all the way through to looking at like, what is the future of the residential zoning district now that much of it has been built out? What next with it? Let me see the comments here, so. There's some interesting stuff in here in like 16.3 that gets into the crossover between like development, layout and planning and conservation. So there's stuff about like landscaping standards in 16.3.2, trying to have landscaping standards that encourage wildlife friendly species and plantings, which that seemed well aligned with what we've been talking about over the last year or two. Looking to create more corridors just kind of naturally through the requirements for development and landscape buffers. Use native plants, that sort of thing. It's not related to conservation, but I definitely was glad to see some things in there about like non-conforming uses. You know, people love Adams Farm Market, people love Corner Quick Stop, people love having a veterinary center in town. I don't know if the veterinary center counts, but there's a lot of things that today would not get approved that people love about Williston. So I'm glad to see there's some rethinking about well, what do we really value and are our rules aligned with that? Okay, so that was pretty much it for chapter 16.
Yep, just writing some notes because this is kind of like my idea and fleshing it out a bit better. And I think like the Glazer development is a good case study of trying to marry the landscaping standards and the habitat standards better. And maybe there's a national standard for this that we could work off of, but like we have all these disturbed lands, everything is like an old farm field and it was something before that, so can the habitats assessment say, here's what I see here, here's what should grow here to enhance this corridor, and rather than our landscape buffer standards are very much based on separating uses,
Visibility and noise.
visibility and noise, and thinking about how can landscaping restore habitat and not just think about exterior buffers, but around homes and in common spaces, so we're enhancing. I think a lot of people are upset about subdivisions because it's all mowed lawn, and it's like, if it's not gonna be mowed lawn, if it's gonna be, you know, biophilic
Shrubs
community
or-
shrubs interspersed with the neighborhood and the common land, then the development's actually repairing an ecosystem that once was.
Yeah, if they're native species, if they provide cover for travel, for
Mhm.
wildlife, all those things. Yeah, so I think this is a really good direction for it to go personally. I was glad to see those things in there. I think the Glazer one is a good example because we didn't even talk about enhancing the plantings in the actual delineated wetlands. But as Chapin came and pointed out at our last meeting, you're gonna have to manage that wetland, because if you just let it go from being hayed to not hayed, you're just gonna get invasives. So it might be beneficial in the future to do things like if somebody wants to develop a parcel and there's an area they're not going to put housing in or structures in because it's a wetland. Okay, well, let's not just assume that it's good enough just not to touch it. Maybe it needs to be started with some plantings to establish constructive native habitat, as opposed to just letting it turn into whatever it turns into.
Mhm.
A field of Phragmites. It's probably what it's gonna be a lot of the time. So that, I thought that was interesting. Chapter 17, I had more comments in, so chapter 17 is the rural land use subdivision design, so it has a lot of crossovers to the conservation chapter. All right, let me just get to my comments. So 17.2 was about requiring low residential density and protection of open space. So I felt like some adjustments are needed to the 17.2. 17.2.1 says to continue to protect 75% open space on parcels larger than 10.5 acres. That in some ways is a little bit counter to the second one, which it says evaluate whether those are the right thresholds. So I thought it could just simply be simplified to say continue to require protection of open space in the ARZD period. And then the second one is to play with the levers on how much is what's the threshold for acres and what percentage is the right percentage. And then 17.2.3 is about requiring clustering of development closer to roads. And this is something that we talk about a lot on almost every ARZB subdivision proposal. And right now we don't have a lot of teeth in it. We're like, well, it's kind of our best practice that we want it. So I think it's really good that it's in here. And my comment was that it should be moved up to near term. And the reason is we've already been recommending this. We continue to want to recommend this over and over again, that if there's going to be a disturbance, it should be near the road to allow less fragmentation of the habitat away from the road. So that was my comment on that one. Significant wildlife habitat areas are covered in here as well, continuing to protect them. And I had a comment in 17.3.4, which was that this is like what's new is that we have a strategy. Is it a strategy or actions? Action. We have an action in here to actually coordinate with neighboring communities on preservation of natural resources and the development review process. So like what's happening on the far side in Richmond or Heinsberg or South Burlington when reviewing developments in the ARZD. Okay, that was that. Then it gets into some of the stuff we've been talking about how do we make it, how do we support rural landowners since they can't do a lot in terms of like building out a giant neighborhood to make financial benefit of their land. It just generally talks about like reuse of historic barns and other recreation options. There's one about
Making Williston
camping.
Williston a wedding destination. That kind of
Right.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so 17.6 talks about exploring new land use regulations that support diversification for farms and small businesses. And 17.6.3 talks about looking at allowing camping. My only comment there, and Reed Parker disagreed with me, which I appreciate. But my view was based on the camping experiences I've had. Campers make more noise than homeowners, and there's more people in a campground than if somebody was just living there. And also trash and litter issues,
Noise.
light issues, noise issues,
Generators.
substance use issues. All these things can kind of crop up with camping. That being said, I support looking into how we can make camping a possibility for revenue and recreation in the ARZD. I just felt like there needs to be involvement from the Conservation Commission in terms of how is that change in use going to impact habitat and wildlife and things like that. I mean, campgrounds can cause a perfectly good corridor not to be used just because of a lot of activity, light, and noise. So,
But they're not used for a substantial part of the year, which can also.
Which could be, it could keep that area open. And so I think there's opportunity there, and it just is going to require some careful management. So Conservation Commission would be one interested party to make sure that that works out. And then there may be other people that need to be involved in reviewing something like that. So I thought that was a good one. I think those were generally my comments. There was nothing surprising or counter to what we have talked about.
Great.
As a commission.
Well done. We're almost back on track with timing.
First time I've ever been under time.
Laura and Gary, I know that you were absent when we assigned this to you, but you are on deck for walking us through any particular maps that you find particularly interesting or relevant for the discussion.
And I'm chapter 3 and 8.
Yeah, I may not be ready to go into detail of that today. Is there an opportunity to continue that? I mean, there's so much information in there. It would just take a long time to go through each map, and I don't know the level of accuracy. I assume they're as accurate as possible at this time, but
All right. I think we totally understand that. If you want to review them while Laura's walking us through our next chapters, if there's anything you do want to flag, it sounds like we're almost out of time,
We have a lot of eyes on the maps chapters
Cool.
between other
That's-
staff and the planning commission, so. Mainly, they're very similar to the past maps.
Trail connectivity, Gary, is the thing. The reason I suggested that you review the maps is mostly about the trail connectivity piece to make sure that there's nothing we've been talking about that isn't represented on the maps that'll be included with the town plan.
yeah, I
Okay.
can comment on that for sure.
all right. Let's give Laura, we don't, her a chance.
Yeah, archaeology will be fast. Can I see also the guest user? I would put my initials in front if it was, if you could move over just a
Yeah.
little. Okay, and this, the 312 was just a little confusing. And because I wasn't sure if we thought that on a high priority parcel, we could consider the likely presence of archaeological resources, or if that is what is making something a high priority parcel. So it is good to think about it. But usually these resources are found when there's construction or, work on a bridge or a power line, and it also, which kind of feeds into 3.2.1, is what is an archaeological resource? People don't usually value things like stone walls, but what is the definition of archaeological resource for this chapter? Because I didn't see a definition.
Yeah, we should make sure, add a definition, and I know like the state was kind of like it's all over the place.
Right, it could be older than 100 years, or, yeah.
I mean, archaeological resources is also different from artifacts too, right? I mean, a resource could just mean like this used to be a place where things happened, and maybe that doesn't mean that there's artifacts. So resources is a very interesting use of the word here rather than,
Right.
I don't know. I agree with you though. Is it consider, is it prioritize, is it, what is that?
Or is it incorporate,
That considers being a lot of
archaeological
work.
value into our conservation prioritization, or is it something else?
Yeah, so, maybe, for, priority parcels that we're considering, conserving, make sure to consider also the likely presence of archaeological, resources. And I mean, throughout Williston, growing up and through, surrounded by woods are old mill sites and all these different things that you can find and quarries. And they're all really interesting. It's not just paleo Indian sites. So anyway, I think we can go on from there. I'm not sure if I had another. Wait, see. I'm not sure what my point was here. I just think it just needed to be clarified about the past. Okay, don't remember, but One thing about signage is that's something that, just to mention, Vermont Master Naturalists just did signage up the snowshoe trail at Mad River Glen, and that's something that they're pretty good at. And plus Terry Marin on the Catamount Committee, also there's signage at Catamount on both geology and I think the indigenous peoples that were there, so. All right. Is that the end of that chapter?
Yes.
Okay, so chapter 8.
Number 8.
This is a good one.
It is a good one. Okay,
SL is Shayla Livingston, I believe.
Chair of planning.
okay. I kind of went on a rampage, but and fund addition to existing outdoor facilities that foster activity and exercise such as outdoor workout stations along the rec paths. And, you know, we all know that it's really hard to fund things in our town, if we do it. And I'm just wondering why, if we require bike paths to be put in when either businesses or developments are put in, why not ask them to put something that could be considered not maybe a pocket park, maybe not even this, it could be called something else, a picnic table and a shade tree, but there should be something that we can ask other people to do. And it could be for their businesses also, it could be a nice place for them to gather. It's just, I just think that,
A delighter.
yeah,
Like not just a strip of pavement, but there should be
Right.
some sort of,
right,
is it that it's a shaded area where
mhm,
it's cool for people to pause on a hot day? Is it?
yeah, and the shade doesn't have to be a tree, it could be a structure, so anyway. Okay, so that was my point there.
Mhm.
Mhm. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay. Development of country parks and trails, prioritizing connections to underserved and underconnected residential neighborhoods and employment nodes. Again, I just made the point, this is a hot button for me where, when I'm on a bike path and I pass this nicely set up area with chairs or picnic tables and it says private. It really riles me. It's on a bike path, it should be public. And I don't know if we can require that. For like the Glacier subdivision that we just looked at, I love seeing all that stuff along the bike path, and it's nice to know that that's public. Because I don't think you can keep the public out of it, and if you put up a big private sign, it just has a really bad feeling to it.
Mhm.
And talk about equity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of the challenge with that existing growth management system where neighborhood amenities, it literally has the line in it. This is private amenities that need not be maintained by the town. I think is the wording in that chapter, so. I might group this with official map and requiring places to provide public amenities. Differently than where our current system is geared towards people creating private, making it public.
Mhm.
Yeah, a lot of times the private amenities don't get maintained anyway. And so,
Right.
yeah,
Mhm.
so nobody gets anything, not even the folks living there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like you remember those, setting up a
Disaggregating parks.
volleyball net,
then
the net falls apart,
Yeah, I don't know how they do it in New York City, but if you walk up Broadway, all the buildings have public parks attached to their building. That they're required to and it has a big sign, public park. I just think that's the way it should be.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah, so the neighborhood space definition and growth management, the intent here is to encourage the creation of places for recreational and civic activities that foster neighborliness but need not be maintained by the town. So I think even with that glazer development, it's gray area if that path is even gonna become public once it's built. And then all those amenities along it are private. We might be able to ask them in the agreements that they maintain them for public accessibility, but there's no bylaw requirement for them to be
Good luck.
public.
Good luck. You know, that's all I can say to that, but good luck. Everyone's gonna use that,
yeah. Okay,
especially once the Mountain View path is connected.
yeah,
By the time I'm 80.
okay. Anyway, I think that was there anything else I had in this chapter? Oh, yeah. Okay, we're talking about a town nursery. I
Oh,
see. But I don't see anywhere in here, when you drive through town, all the old plantings around places at Taft Corners are all invasives. There's even a buckthorn next to Town Hall. And I think that there should be some mention of replacing these invasive plantings with natives, and I don't know how you do that, whether it's incentivizing that with businesses, or you know, if you established a town tree nursery, you would be able to say, you know, we have these native trees. Would you be willing to pay to have these planted in place of the barberry that's lining your walk or whatever?
Yeah, I think this I might group with that enhanced landscape standard.
Mm,
Yeah,
So,
I'm even wondering, is there an action in one of the other chapters about, like reviewing the, species list
mhm,
for town plantings as well as what landscapers are required to comply with to make sure that it's all moving in the same direction toward
mhm.
more native, more things that are gonna be able to survive weather
Yeah,
changes.
yeah.
Sorry, I
There's,
see Gary has a hand up to that.
oh, sorry, Gary has.
Well,
something.
I just want to comment on that establishment of a tree nursery. Is that approved, or I mean, I thought our discussions in the past were to maybe explore the establishment of a town tree nursery, because I think we don't know anything about the cost implications or whether it'd be wise to even do, as far as I know.
That was actually my flag as well.
Or manage, yeah.
I do feel like we talked about that broadly when this topic was first initiated.
Yes.
And I know, for example, that like Intervale is also does tree nursery, and like partnering with a place like Intervale that has a lot of land,
Yes.
could be a more sort of cost-effective use than trying to acquire land, grow the nursery. You know, it just seems like a
Yeah.
town nursery
Yeah.
seems like too much.
mhm. Right, so we continue to study and evaluate the feasibility.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Laura, do you have
I don't think there was anything else, if you could just scroll up. Oh, I just, here. Maintain a land management plan and ensure aligning with funding requirements. And I was wondering for Catamount, there's a Catamount management plan and there's a Catamount forest management plan. And I just wanted to make sure the wording reflected what was meant here.
So there's two different management plans.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's the management plan for the Catamount Community Forest. And then in that plan, it says we need a forest management plan, which is what Ethan Tapper wrote. So there are two management plans. One's for the community forest, which talks about recreation, et cetera. And then there's the forest management plan, which talks about what trees are there, what invasives, how to manage them. Manage for timber, et cetera.
Okay, I think we're gonna, so we do have a discretionary permit to review at 8:40. I think I wanna wrap this one up in the next 5 to 6 minutes, so.
Yeah, I'm done with this.
Okay,
Chapter 8.
so Laura's done, Gary, do you wanna make any comments about maps, or do you wanna maybe readdress this next week?
Let me just make a quick comment related to the primitive trails. I think, as we've all known, we've had a massive increase in the use of primitive trails with COVID, and even since then, I assume we're at higher levels than we were before COVID. The one thing I like this map. It has the easements in it for the future. I know at one point we had links between those easements and the actual easement language, which allowed us to understand what was allowed. I assume that still exists. We had like a folder of easements that went with this map. The other thing, in some type of action plan associated with this map, it'd be nice to have some action taken to increase primitive trails, at least in the areas where we already have the easements, to make these connections that we've talked about for years, if not decades. It'd be nice to have that in the town plan if it could. I don't exactly know where it fits, but that makes sense.
Mhm.
I just caught an error in this.
Which one?
There's a trail that actually connects up by the orchard down to not Brennan Woods, Williston Woods. It's actually a fire road, but
Yeah, it may not be an actual official trail, though, an official primitive path. I'm not sure about that.
it's a fire road. It's maintained, but you're right. It should be a path, though. I mean, people use it as a path.
There's one connection that I've brought up, and it seemed as though folks on the commission were supportive of, which is a conceptual desired connection from the park and ride at exit 12 up to Five Tree Hill on the side of 2A. So we have the desired connection on the west side of 2A down to Brown Isle Mountain area, but we don't have one on the east side up to Five Tree Hill, and that's something that would be, I put it in the list of examples of the types of things that ERF funding can lead to, is things that provide accessibility. Right now, you can only get there if you can drive, basically. But if you don't have a car or there's not enough parking, you're out of luck if you want to go up there. So.
Yeah, and then even an extension to that, to the east up Hurricane Lane and all the way across, would be another good connection all the way across, I guess, towards Oak Hill Road.
Yeah, I think we've got that one, right? We've got the purple. Is that purple is desired?
Yeah, purple's
Yeah.
desired. Hash is
But
a
I mean,
trail.
start to put those pieces together to actually make a connection, and along with what you just suggested, Reed. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the section I'm talking about. No, you can't see it, Eric and Gary, but this section here from the end of our dotted line to the Soccer Brook.
Yeah.
Right. But I think
Sure.
just a small group that might get together a few times and try to identify the places that have the most potential or don't need any additional easements or anything to make those connections.
Why is there not a connection desired between that trail coming out of Five Tree? I forgot the name of it. We just dealt with a
Oh, Schmoker.
Smoker Trail. Why
Yeah.
is there not a connector to the Mud Pond Country Park there?
It does connect, actually, that's.
I think there is a connection there.
Yeah,
It's actually,
well, it's not-
I don't know why it isn't on the map, but
Yeah,
Oh,
it's missing,
it's called the Crosstown
Right
Trail.
here.
right there,
Yeah.
yeah, it's missing, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought they connected, so,
Mhm.
okay, so that needs to be updated.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a missing piece of existing trail, yeah.
Very good. Okay. This is a favorite trail or favorite map of this commission, Gary, and thanks for bringing it up. Always happy to look at this one. Anything else you wanted to flag for our awareness? I guess I also would love to see, speaking of just if we're putting on a wish list, I think the Brownell Mountain is identified as needing a management plan. I would love to see a trail reflected on this map, just like a big orange or a big purple squiggly line saying it'd be great to have a trail in there.
Yeah.
It seems really anomalous that we have this big parcel, it's a mountain and there's no trail.
yeah, that
Okay.
one's complicated with parking and such too. I know we've had those discussions in the past. The only other thing I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, Emily, is a wetlands map. Is that, do we always just refer to the state maps for that, or how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so
Watersheds.
wetlands are kind of a moving target because they're so site specific, so we do refer to the state on
Yeah.
wetlands. And then that map gets updated as specific projects have a delineation done.
So it's best probably to stick with that because we don't have to be responsible for it.
Mm-hmm. There's gonna be a lot of holes, like if there hasn't been any development proposed in a long time, there's not gonna be any surveys that have been done.
Okay, then I think we can close out this agenda. Thanks for the great discussion and all of the work that the commissioners put into reviewing these chapters. I trust that if anything comes up over the next crunch time, staff will bring it to us for review or consideration.
Yep. And if you guys notice anything, I think particularly on the maps, I think a staff feel pretty good on some of the text. But if you notice something that's missing from the maps that should be there, shoot us an email
With a screenshot.
with a
that would be helpful.
screenshot, yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, or give us a call so we can talk through the map together on the phone, that would be helpful too.
Great. All right, so we have a discretionary permit to review. It looks relatively straightforward and you didn't give it a ton of time on the agenda, so I'm guessing that it is, but if you just want to walk us through, this is a repeat project, so we should be familiar with it.
Yep, and online, we have the applicant Scott Batdorf, and his engineer Jacques LaRose, as well as a couple other members of the public. So this is a discretionary permit for a 2-lot subdivision. A pre-application review by the Conservation Commission took place on February 5th. And the DRB accepted those advisory recommendations. This project was not required to do a habitat disturbance assessment because less than a half acre of land is being disturbed. The main change that's being made to the site plan is reducing the building envelope for the home site.
The side by side site plan is really helpful to see that.
Oh, pardon me.
Mhm.
Yep, so there is the side-by-side site plan. That was the recommendation from the Conservation Commission. If there's not gonna be the HDA study done, then reduce the size of the envelope and shift it north for that habitat area. And then maintain that existing hedgerow along the eastern property line. In this case, that eastern property line is along the south side. And you can see where the driveway has been accommodated to that. They also provide the wetlands delineation with the cedar posts along the wetland buffer.
Emily's just stepping out for a second. And she's back.
Yep, so the recommendation, is that this complies as proposed because they met all of the pre-app recommendations.
Okay. Is that anything more to add for staff or?
That's it from staff. If Scott or Jacques have anything they want to add.
Yep, that's the applicants to add anything of relevance.
Sure. Just this is Jacques LaRose from CEA. I just wanted to say thank you guys for taking a look at this project again, and we believe we met all your requests, and hopefully you're satisfied.
Any comments from commissioners?
I don't have any.
All right.
I'm good.
Okay. Then it looks like the action on the table is to approve the staff memo and the proceeding of the discretionary permit. The next steps for the project would be then to go to the DRB with its final discretionary permit application.
I'll move approval of the recommendation that it complies.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Laura seconds. We'll call this for a vote then. All in favor of approving the discretionary permit as complies?
I
Aye.
Hearing no abstentions or objections, it's approved.
good luck at the next step.
Good luck.
Alright, this goes to the DRB on April 8th, I believe.
All right, sounds good. And that was a quick one. So look at that. Right on schedule. Easy peasy. Somehow the town website always changes when anyways, okay.
Websites are hard, it's okay.
Well, it's like when you click on the link,
Yeah,
sometimes it'll create a new tab and sometimes it'll just, so you're constantly refreshing it. So we do have a couple other matters of other business, that because we did save some time, which is good, because I have to get to work. Topics for upcoming meetings, we talked about at the beginning of this meeting that the conservation planner will start at the end of the month. We're very excited. The planner should be at the next April meeting. And then town plan and green up day, which is always a big one for this commission to work through. So let's start with other business, upcoming meetings. Any topics that we want to get to specifically? I know Reed and I have talked about putting some agenda topics on for what do we do with ERF funding now that we've got it. I would also put on that we are probably due for an update from Winooski Valley Parks District. That seems like something that we can maybe tee up for the new planner. Seeing as they get onboarded, they'll have to talk to Nick and Tim. And so we might want to tee that one up. Any other topics that people are looking for or that we know of that are coming?
I think, I know Chapin is in discussion with the manager's office and potentially the select board about how to make volunteering easier in town. I think Conservation Commission likely will be asked to provide formal input on that, so we might want to put a placeholder to talk about how the Conservation Commission's goals would be supported by volunteer efforts.
Great. Anything more than
Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
I think all of those are great and should be prioritized over my suggestions. But I'm just gonna bring this up because I bring it up like once every 3 years, and we never get to it, and that is especially with a new staff, a conservation planner coming on board. The notion of I don't know, we've had different names for it over the years, but basically a welcome packet for new Conservation Commission members. Here's just a thing of, here's what the roles, responsibilities, and expectations are for the Conservation Commission members, starting with, as Dave learned, the meetings are at 7 a.m.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to advertise it, Eric, honestly. It might distract some people from the
Yep.
from
Yep.
the value of participation.
We have something too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm interested in that topic, Eric, and I also could see myself helping with that. I've done a lot of things like that recently. Since I do training and development stuff for work. My thing was gonna be, people keep asking me, when is the Allenbrook Bridge gonna be passable? So, I know that
That's
there's
gonna hit
funding.
hot and heavy soon.
Yeah, because it's coming into season where everybody's like, yay, outside, oh wait, I still can't cross the bridge.
Yeah.
Or I am crossing the bridge, but it's not safe. So, I know that, we asked in the capital budget, I believe, for, enough money to do a stabilization project to make it passable, and then we were gonna think in the future about requesting separate money to actually do like engineering of how to make this not break over and over again.
Mhm.
I don't know if we need to get on looking at, like putting together an RFP for that. I don't know, we already have a,
I think we just need a status update, really.
yeah.
Yeah,
we just
an
need to, like,
Allenbrook Bridge
update.
status update.
Yeah,
on there.
that's, thank you, that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say, we need to touch base on that issue.
Laura.
This just popped into my head, and I know we've talked about an arborist before. And over the past year, I've seen from, oh, what's the name of it? I get these tree mails. And there's so much money available for small grants and large grants, and I've even called up Bruce and said, there's this much money available, there are things we can do with this, replace some of the buckthorn, blah, blah, around the town hall, put shade trees in, and he goes, I know, but right now we're doing something else. And I was thinking, he's only one person as a tree warden. But possibly if an arborist could also almost pay for themselves by getting some of this grant money and that's been available. Anyway, it's just something I wanted to mention.
So I'm kind of pressing the idea for upcoming meetings because I think the new planning staff person will be coming in the 31st. Our next meeting is the 2nd. So within 2 days, they'll be at our meeting at 7 a.m. I think that's part of the job description, right? In town. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. But I think we should be thinking about these things because as we get our permanent staff person back, I think it would be a regular practice for us to have these ongoing topics and we have the regular permitting and those kind of time sensitive applications that need to come through, but then we do have these rolling topics that are continuing to be addressed. So anything big like that, just keep thinking about because that's a start of a list, but I do like the idea of getting that list up and running. And I know for being chair, Eric, and first Simon, and then or was Andrew, thank you. We had that list going, right? And so I think that list has sort of fallen off a little bit because of the staff turnover. So hopefully we can get that back up and going once the new person comes on. Okay. Town plan and green update. Any update from the town there? Or any asks of us?
We're getting interest for the groups for having vendors at the event. I think as we get closer, we'll need help with green up routes, especially some of these trickier areas in town. So just stay tuned for more details. That'll be coming in, early April as we start launching the event, and we might need help with getting posters and information up throughout town. It's tough because this event is overlapping with the town plan, so it's gonna take a lot of our time.
Okay, yeah.
And we might need to help outsource some on the ground activities to get the event launched.
Okay, still planning to use the app? Is the app still the?
Probably, I know the Green Up Day app isn't the best, so in the past, we've used the app and we've had a paper map. I'm not sure if you guys have any feedback on those.
Well, I was deleting apps yesterday and I got to the Green Up app and I was like, oh, I wonder, are we gonna use this again? I'd like to delete it if we're not, but just I think that the consistency of it all is what's important, and I think that it was not totally intuitive on how to like draw a map on that. You just end up dropping a ton of pins and it's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's more feedback for the Green Update organization, and I've been meaning to reach out to Kate, the director, because I feel like they could get some good app developer where you can be other communities use like Sign Up Genius. So there's a lot of gaps that the app doesn't fill, but then communities find their own ways of doing it. I think there's a place there to make it more streamlined to draw routes, have the town as an admin pinpoint locations that groups can sign up for. So if you know any app developers that would want to do some nonprofit work for Green Up Day.
I know one.
Kate.
Okay.
But for this year, we'll probably do the same method of trying to mirror their app with our own system.
Okay. Cool. Very good. Then we will adjourn. If there's no other business.
The New Neighbors Beaver documentary is playing April 7th.
I gotta head out. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
Eric.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
I think it's the 5th. Saturday the
That
5th.
sounds right, yeah.
At the library.
And I'll be playing at the library noon to 1.
All right.
The time in the Front Porch Forum post was not quite right.
Right,
So
yeah.
I'm sure another post will come out about it, but and a new YouTube link for the Conservation Commission to preview it is available. So if anybody wants to watch it, Laura or I could share the final
Yeah,
link, but it's not available for the public until after it's debuted on the 5th of April. That's it.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Meeting's adjourned. Have a good one. See you, Gary.
thank you very much.
Bye.